The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in a cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised. Caution. You are now entering the all-consuming realm of Shea's Paranormal Chat, where the things that are better left unsaid are actually said.
Shut up and sit down.
You're listening to Shea's Paranormal Chat. Paranormal podcasting done Shea's way. Tons of fun.
Dude, seriously?
A bit sarcastic.
Hashtag investigator, not hunter.
But always real.
Hashtag data, not evidence.
Don't get your panties in a twist.
Oh my god, really?
This is real, raw conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Shea's Paranormal Chat, TGIF. I am so excited tonight. We have an awesome little lady here with us tonight. She's back after 5 months. We have Ashley Storm. How you doing, Ashley?
I am wonderful, darling. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, hanging in there.
It's Friday. It's the party.
It is. So there's so much to talk about. You were on about 5 months ago, and you were nice enough. I actually was going to take the day off, but I squeezed you in, and you were nice enough to come on. I think it was like 30, 40 minutes at most, and I said I would have you back, and then I ended up taking the summer off. So I'm so glad you made time to.
Oh, anytime for you, boo-boo.
Yes. I am. I'm a big fan
and
of
I
the
had
show.
so much fun last time. I mean, I had to come back.
We did. You know. I see we have Fred, of course, already in chat. It's great to see you, Fred. I'm so glad you're doing well. Thank you for joining us. So you want to tell people, let's see, where do we want to start? How did you get interested in the paranormal? Let's start there.
Well, I've always kind of had a, not necessarily knack for it, but an interest because, I mean, I grew up thinking that seeing other spirits or other people, hearing those voices or feeling those types of energies that, you know, we now categorize as either spirits or ghosts and things like that. I thought that was normal for everybody. I grew up in Guam, and we are very ritualistic. We are still very, I guess, strict to our culture. We believe that our ancestors watch over the island. I mean, we still spray perfume on babies' diapers, so the tatamonas, the ancestors of the island, don't track down the baby and try and claim it as their own. I mean, we're very superstitious, and so I always grew up with that belief in different energies and spirits, and I've seen them since I can remember. But professionally investigating just about 2 years ago, because I was tired of hiding that part of me, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It's way more normalized now. Not everybody looks at you and it's like, oh my God, you're crazy. Now there's a point to it. Now there's a following. People understand and people believe, or at least are more willing to say that they believe nowadays.
It's more mainstream now.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, I get that. So did you start with the team? Did you start on your own?
I started on my own, and then From there, I added one member to the team because I couldn't really find anybody in the vicinity that I'm in that was interested. I mean, I legit asked everybody that I could possibly ask, and no, everybody's like, nope, not doing it. My brother came on one with me once, and that was the first and only time he ever went with me. He would not go back. But to be fair, the first location I took him to was Goatman's Bridge in Alton, the old Alton Bridge in Denton, Texas.
You got to break it in a little easier than that.
Well, I needed to get out there. I wanted to go. And he was like, yeah, I'll go with you. Oh, I know he wishes he wouldn't have. He spent most of the night, after about the first hour and a half, he spent it kind of away from us because he was like, this is getting way too weird. When, he'd hear the responses to our questions, like spot on, and hear them in different voices. And the whole thing just really, really freaked him out. He won't go anymore. But then I did add a team member because of a horror junkies page that I actually followed. We were talking about poltergeist activity and just any type of spirits, ghosts type of movies, things like that. And it happened that he was in the same area as me. Well, he's like an hour and a half away, but that was closer than anybody else. And he was willing to go. So I added that person to my team, but then it became just more of like a scheduling thing. If you want to go out and do something without that person, you either have to wait until your schedules coincide, which never happens, or you have to sit there and try and squeeze in investigations, which 2 or 3 hours to do something is not enough time thorough. And so it was just easier to be on my own. Plus, I like the not having background noise to eliminate because I do everything. I do the editing, I do the audio, all of the recaps, all of it myself. And so when I don't have that background noise to look for, it's way easier going through 12 hours of audio evidence from a location when you don't have to say, well, was that my investigator walking? Was that them saying something? And, was that making them noise in another room? Just eliminates a lot of that. But I would love to have a group, but it's just nobody's near me.
It doesn't make it easy. We have our main group, my team, not Paranormal Buzz, but Sis Paranormal, my sister and I co-founded after we left. I was part of another team, and she went on one, and she was always interested in the paranormal, so I knew she would like it. It was her birthday present, took her on one, and, she really got into it, and after we left that team, we co-founded our team, and it's called Sis Paranormal, and so now our mother joins us. We have a friend that joins us, but mostly it's just, it can be just her and I, and I don't like going with big groups for real investigations. Ghost hunts are different. That's fun. But I think the smaller can be better unless you have like a 15-room mansion. That's a little different, but.
See, but I love doing those big places by myself. I don't know why. It's just being able to get lost in those places, and your energy focuses better. I found, and I guess I can kind of be honest about this. I won't say his name, but my other investigator, aside from the scheduling thing, it was he kind of didn't want to do it anymore because of how affected he would become when he would go into these places. It gradually got stronger and stronger to the point where what I feel when I start channeling those energies, what I feel when I start getting those messages, when you're connecting on a completely different level, the emotions transfer over to him. There was the last location that we had actually done together that it's like it drew all of his energy just to interact with me, and you could tell that it was just taking a toll on him. You see it's the Los Isleños Museum investigation that I did, the documentary that I did for that. You can see parts of it where he's a cameraman, and the camera just starts nodding off kind of because he's losing it. He's going in and out of kind of consciousness almost. And he feels dizzy, like he's going to puke. And it's not even necessarily negative things that we interact with that make him like that. So I can only imagine how much worse it would have gotten for him if we had come across something negative that tried to use his energy to connect with me. And it got, I guess, scary for him, which I don't blame him. I don't blame him for, you know, putting himself first. I really don't. Your well-being is the most important thing. And if you're not well enough or you don't feel secure enough to go, then you shouldn't be there. And I respect the fact that he was at least honest enough to admit that.
Yeah. A lot of people wouldn't be that honest and would continue to do it, but that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
We have a couple questions already in chat. And no Kelly tonight, guys. Of course, she has her expo this weekend. So if I miss your question, feel free to repeat it. Wolf wants to know, how do you choose your investigation locations?
Ooh, I like doing places that nobody's ever done before. Because, one, I like getting that fresh contact with those places. It's a completely different feeling when you go into a place that's never been investigated, but they have literally like either centuries or decades worth of stories of it being haunted, or of activity, versus when you go to the places that are rented out every weekend for ghost hunts or constantly gone to. That fresh energy pool is just amazing. So I always look for places that are just either in the middle of nowhere or a lot of historic societies. I go to places that I don't think that other people would have thought to necessarily try and investigate, like an old asylum that is now a haunted house. I find the most random little things, and I mean, it's legitimately days worth of researching, and also days and at least 50, 60 phone calls to places asking for permission first and foremost, and then getting told no for most of them because they don't want their business to be put out there like that, or they don't want it labeled a certain way, especially where I live. So I usually end up going out of town to either Louisiana or Oklahoma because they're way more accepting, about what they do allow or what they'll admit to, at least. And so I have found the most... It's
a culture.
Awesome,
it's in the culture.
Yeah. It really is. Again, we're like kind of in the Bible Belt still. Yep. So we don't talk about that.
Yep.
But I'm from Louisiana, so I mean, we talk about it all the time. And I just, the historic aspect of it is what really draws me in. If the place has a very deep history, a rich history, I also spend weeks, sometimes months, researching these places. I will go into the actual towns, go to their libraries, make sure I have all of the different city files, the different death and birth certificates, just any type of information that I can gather on these places. And then I decide from there. But if they say yes, they're definitely on my list. Like, I have a huge list of places that I'm supposed to go, but I've had to put that on hold since I got pregnant. Yeah. But that's how it has to be historic. I love little places. Now, I'll go to big places, but I love the smaller, more
intimate, more less known. I like the less known.
The feeling of the history. Like when you go into a building that's over 200, 300 years old, that's just a whole nother level of peace. It does. It brings me peace being in these places most of the time.
Cynthia has a question here. What is your most interesting investigation?
Ooh. Interesting how? Because there's different types of interesting.
True.
I'd say the one that sticks out the most is definitely the Bonnie and Clyde Ambush Museum, but only because of what happened after I went there. Other than that, I would definitely say Goatman's Bridge, because I was not expecting that at all. I actually went there as kind of like I'm going to prove you wrong. Not everything's evil. Not everything's demonic kind of thing. I was wrong. And it's not necessarily that whatever's there is demonic, but it was definitely an evil brought there by humans doing rituals and sacrifices and stuff. Like, there's a very distinct difference between the two of those.
Yeah,
It's not demonic,
there really is,
but it's evil.
Yep.
I was sick for 2 weeks after that. Could barely hold anything down, and then I ended up inside of the ER because I was so dehydrated that I couldn't function anymore after that investigation. And that was after I got scratched. And I have no idea still to this day. Like, I tried every which way to debunk it and could not. I had a hoodie up over my head, and I also had my headlamp on because we were outside. So there's no way that anything could have gotten into my hood. Like, it wasn't branches from us walking around. It was nothing like that.
Right.
It was just crazy. Yeah, that was definitely the most interesting in a negative way, and the most interesting in a positive way would be Bonnie and Clyde. And that's interesting because of the bond that I feel that has formed with both of them, because I was not expecting to actually get into contact with those two. I was not actually expecting them to be there. I did know that this place was very active with the spirit of Rosa Canfield, who owned the restaurant that they actually had their last meal in, Ma Canfield's Cafe, that the Ambush Museum now sits inside of. I did not expect that to happen. I did not expect for it to get as deep as it did, or that connection to be as strong as it did. And after I found out that from what she was channeling in the messages, and you can even go back on the documentary that I made. I always make documentary series about the locations that I do. And one of her...
don't forget, where can we find these?
On YouTube, under Profoundly Paranormal.
Okay. In case, I don't want to forget later, so I just wanted to...
No worries. But the responses that I got, and you guys can go back and see for yourselves. At first, so there's 4 hours pretty much of where they just don't talk. It won't say anything until I read the personal history that I wrote for them. And then I start reciting Bonnie's poem, her end-of-the-line poem, the last poem she ever wrote and left with her mother just a few weeks before they were actually gunned down in Gibbsland, Louisiana. Now, straight in a full sweep, in the same exact voice as I'm reciting her poem, she chimes in at the same exact point. Like, it picks up exactly where I left off and says, "They won't give up till they die." In a full sweep, same voice. I mean, it was just clear as day. It was like her saying, "Okay, I trust you finally." And after that, the activity did not stop. And so towards, I guess you would say, the end of it, I keep asking, is there anything that you want me to tell people? Is there anything that I need to be telling someone, anyone, to get you closure, to get you that peace that you need? Because a big part of why they're not at rest is because they're not buried together the way they wanted to be in the end, and because of just how gruesome and in the disgusting fashion that they died. And she continuously, and it was the same exact topic. I mean, you hear me have a conversation with her about how she lost her baby, and there are many accounts that Bonnie Parker was actually pregnant when she was shot down. That's why they didn't do an autopsy. They just did an inquiry. That's why they have multiple documents saying, like, a month or two before they actually died, from a Texas doctor saying that she was in a delicate state, which we all know back then
meant
delicate state. She was pregnant. And so it was crazy to me. And that pain that you feel, it's real. When you connect with these spirits, you feel what they feel, exactly what they feel. And it was heartbreaking. Well, come to find out, 3 months later, I'm pregnant, which was never supposed to be able to happen. I've literally been told my entire life, I've just turned 29, been told my entire life, me having kids in the natural way was never viable, ever. Like 0% chance. And then come to find out, my conception date was actually the weekend that I went to the Bonnie and Clyde Museum. And got these answers.
So by the grace of God and maybe a little help from Bonnie, little Oliver will be here in December.
Yep. I completely feel like that was a gift for helping somebody in that situation, because I don't know. I don't know any other way to explain it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
there's no other way, and how it coincides with the dates and just what happened. And people can think it's like hokey or whatever. I don't care. I know the connection that I felt, and I truly do believe that was like a thank you for me helping and getting that story across for so many people to hear.
If you make me cry on my own show and lose my hard
I was-
ass, I'm called a hard ass for a reason, girl. So
I'm tearing up too, but it's just the pregnancy hormones. Don't get me twisted.
mine's just old woman hormones. But that one of the reasons why we hit it off, and we're friends, I think, is because back to what you said, you just don't care. Like, we speak our truth, and it's not always popular. We're not always popular, but we speak our truth, and hell or high water, we're not gonna say something
be swayed
just to make somebody happy. Exactly. Yeah. We hit it off that first time. Yeah, that first time we ever talked, and it was like, yeah, we knew.
Yeah, before the show, I was like, what? I want her to be my best friend.
Yeah. Yep. So, Fred has a question. And I am trying to keep up in chat, guys. Hi, Cynthia. Hi, Roland. Hi, Matt. Hi, Wolf. Josh has also joined us. If I missed anybody, I'll get you at the end. Fred would like to know, although you enjoy investigating alone, if you could put together a dream team to investigate with, who would be there?
Oh, Fred. First of all, you would be included in that. I would have Fred, Jake Rodriguez, the men from Spirit Recon. I would definitely have you, Cynthia. I would have Dan Norvell, Sandra Wells, and Russ Wells. And then I would also invite Chris McKinnell, who is the head of the Warren Legacy Foundation. And then, just for fun, I might bring along Aaron Goodwin so we can use him as bait.
Oh, there you go. He's used to that. He is very used to that.
Exactly. He'll be fine. I won't be as mean about it either. I mean, he'd probably actually have a pretty good time with us.
I'd give him a donut or something while he was waiting, at least. I wouldn't just be like,
Give him a quiet snack, but a snack nonetheless.
Yeah. Yes. That's why I said donut. You can't really hear it chewing. Roland would like to know, does every investigation have to have a history, or can an investigation just be to listen to the spirit, just to hear their story?
Oh, absolutely. I do a lot of private home investigations. So, I mean, that definitely falls into that category. And there are times where I'll just go places with no camera rolling, equipment, but no camera rolling, not doing it for any set purpose or reason, but just seeing if anybody wants to be heard. That's a huge part of why I do what I do, is because I feel like we dehumanize them so much. We forget that at one point they literally were humans. Amen. They might be spirits, might be energies, but they were human at one point. And I think that when we go in and we're threatening, and I always say this, if you're an ass in life, you're going to be an ass in death. But that doesn't mean that we can't help them grow as well. If we can sit there and find a way to relate to them, communicate with them, and even understand them, you can actually help energies grow. Energies are what I call the ones that haven't passed over yet. Ghosts, to me, are the ones that have passed over but choose to come back. Energies are the ones that are stuck here. And you can definitely help them grow and move on. If you just sit there and take the time to kind of try and understand like you would a human being, you might be aggressive. They might be aggressive with you at first, or you might feel threatened at first, but it's just like anything else. You have to work on a relationship. There are places that I've gone multiple times, and the repertoire between me and that certain energy started off pretty nasty, but after a while, getting to know his story, like just by little things that would pick up here and there, or the responses that we'd get to certain questions, the history checks that, you can do on just random people in towns, found out a little bit more about his story, and we didn't really become friends, but he didn't hate me being there anymore when I would go.
So he warmed up a little bit.
He would just be like, all right, you're not here to be like, you're not a threat. All right, I'm just going to sit back. And he wouldn't mess with me as much as he did the first, 10 times we went to that certain location.
Yep. I am alive, and it takes me a while, most times, to warm up to people. A few that you hit it off with, but most times,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same way. Roland has another question for you. Have you ever communicated with a spirit that is not historically known that added to your investigation?
Oh, absolutely, all the time. Again, I don't consider the home investigations that I do to be actual investigations. That's more just there to help people. But most definitely at the Islanios Museum. Now, they weren't historical figures by any means, at least not by, textbook standards and things like that. But the most interesting part of that to me was because of where it was. It's in the town of St. Bernard, where I grew up in New Orleans. And the Islanios is a very rich culture down there. I actually know, I'm still best friends till this day with a lot of the families that either still run that museum or help run that museum, are in that museum, or have some type of affiliation with it, or at least their ancestors did. And it was crazy because the first time I went, I actually got asked by a spirit that was still lingering in this place that he wanted to communicate with his son. And I was like, well, I don't know who your son is. And he was like, yes, you do. And so I kept getting flashes of two of my childhood friends. And I was like, what? That makes no sense. So then after I left that investigation, I texted one of them, the younger one, and I was like, hey, does the name Charlito mean anything to you? And they were like, dude, that's my grandpa. I was like, well, he wants to talk to your dad because he wants to talk to his son. And so then after that, I actually stayed on the phone for about 2.5 hours with the actual son and just communicated everything that he wanted said to him. And I mean, they were absolutely floored by the things that I was telling them, because I was like, he wants his boats back. All he kept talking about was his boats. He talked about his boats all night. And apparently, after Hurricane Katrina, which is why I moved to Dallas, they had moved all of these boats that he had made, because he was like the craftsman for all of the boats and the fisher boats and all the little crab traps and nets and things like that. They moved the exhibit that he had made away from the museum after the hurricane and never put it back. So that's what he was asking about. So it made sense to me afterwards. I was like, oh my gosh, he just wants his boats back because they used to be there. But I didn't know any of this until I was talking to the family. Like, okay, now the boats make sense. He just kept talking about the boats, and now he wants them back, but he wants to talk to you because he's okay. I mean, just that whole situation was crazy. Horrible.
I can't even imagine that whole thing.
It's very unnerving. And, yeah, and that was the first time I'd actually gotten to that was the first time I'd gone there. Because I'd gone to this location twice, but the first time when that happened with the Charlito, I had also had the chance to channel face-to-face the person who the message was for. Mr. Bill Hyland, the gentleman who but he's the curator of the Islanios Museum. He actually lives on the property. This lady kept following him around and asking me to get him to talk to her. So I was like, okay, do you mind if I try something real quick? It's like, sure. And you can watch on the documentary. I actually even have it outset as its own video of me directly channeling Miss Louise to Mr. Bill. Like, she's legit asking questions that I would have no clue about any of this shit. And he's, responding back. And then you can see he starts to tear up. And I'm like, do you want to try and see if you can hear her? And I put on the spirit box and she comes through, hey, Bill. Just clear as day. And he's like, oh my God, that's her voice. To see people so moved and to help those people get that message across. That's only job, honestly, in all of this. Like, if I can help one person move on, find comfort, or get any type of relief, then that's what I want to do. It doesn't have to be historical. It could be anyone. If you need help, then I'm here to help you.
Exactly. Wolf wants to know, I'm going to reword it a little bit, but how often do you come across the difference between a house being haunted and the person being haunted? What do you think? Do you have a guess on which do you think happens more?
I think it's more so the people. I've definitely found that it's more so the people than it is the actual location, because there are a lot of things that go into that. I mean, if you already have a natural predisposition or mental illness or any type of, like how they say a demon, if you have any type of struggles or mental wearies, any type of anxieties that are big enough, problems that are big enough, you can manifest that activity yourself. You can manifest that negative energy around you. You can manifest things happening. And I've found a lot more often than not, it's people, and being sick is also a big thing. If you're, gravely ill, or you have some type of sickness that's always kept you kind of down, or just not at 100%, you're definitely more susceptible to those energies. And I found that it's the people, because when you go into these locations and try and do these investigations, especially the home ones, when the person's not home, it's very rare to actually encounter anything. Now, there have been tons of times where I ask them to come back. I always do at least 3 or 4 different sessions in the, locations at the
I'm the same
residential homes. Because you always want to see what it's like on any given night. But I always ask for at least one of the sessions to be with, the owner there, or the particular person, because it's not always the owner. Sometimes it's people that they have move in with them, or they're just in their lives at that moment, at that point in time. And the activity is much more aggressive, much more volatile most of the time, or just unnerving. It's definitely more so people than actual locations, in my opinion, because there was one case specifically, actually, that just happened just recently, was the only time that the location was the problem, so far as I've done, and I've done at least like 30 of these. And it was the first time that they moved and everything stopped.
Wow.
And that was the only time that location has ever been a factor in what was going on. Very odd.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at Roland. I am listening to you.
I just read his too.
He's being
Shea
smart.
Is totally awesome.
Yeah, he didn't think I was reading, although I don't believe that either. I just said that, unless he missed it. But of course, anybody that's listening, we're talking about Roland and Miss Cynthia from Raven Rose Paranormal. Which, speaking of, Roland has another question for you. And you already touched on this a little bit, so you can answer the first part as quick as you want to and then go into the second part. How do you approach your investigations? Well, let's start with this. Roland was having trouble with his phone. He couldn't get in, so he might have missed this part. So he wants to know, how do you approach your investigations, cold with no information, or do you do depth research before you get into your location? And does this later lead to preconceived interpretations?
When it's something that I'm trying to do for one of my documentaries, I definitely do in-depth research beforehand. But that's only so far as pretty much as the land goes, and kind of like the ownership over time, different little things like that. I will afterwards go and get, death certificates, birth certificates, things like that from the local libraries or city offices when they give it to you. It's not always often that they'll actually give you everything.
Right.
But when it's a personal home investigation, I always go in blindly because I do not want anything to be swayed. After I do 2 investigations in the home, I will go and do the same exact type of research that I would do for, any other investigation that I do for my documentary series. because knowing what kind of land it's on, ownership over time, different things that the building was, multi-purpose for, used for, that can definitely help tell you where that source of energy is coming from. A lot of the times, especially the ones I do in Oklahoma, I find it has a lot to do with because of where they are, geographically. There are quite a few Choctaw and Comanche reservations, what used to be Comanche and Choctaw reservations on land where I've actually done tons of investigations for people, because it all seems to just be tied into the land. It's very not unsettling, but it's definitely a completely different type of energy when you're dealing with Native American backgrounds and things. And so I definitely like knowing what if I'm dealing with that, because then you have to approach that investigation in a completely different manner. Your natural rituals, the things that you would normally use aren't going to work in this situation, because you're dealing with a whole different religious set. You're dealing with a whole different set of beliefs, and so you need to handle it accordingly.
So do you switch up your beliefs and how you do things according to the other beliefs that are going on there?
Oh, absolutely. I make sure that that's part of, and it's funny because when I first released my logo, people were like, oh my God, you're satanic. And I was like, well, if you actually research it, it's not satanic, but it is a bunch of different, it's every practice. I've tried to research every single either religion, I don't want to say cult sect, but different tribal rituals, different pagan rituals. Broaden your horizons, because you don't know you never know what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a Catholic family, then you need to use Catholic rites or Catholic prayer. If you're dealing with, an atheist family, none of that shit's gonna work.
But how do you, if you don't believe in it yourself, how do you?
That's the thing, though. I believe very heavily in God, something bigger than us, and it's easy to transition then over to a pagan mindset for people, because again, that's just believing in the power of something.
Yeah.
I believe in the power of the universe, the energy of the universe. I believe that it all coincides somehow. It might not necessarily be God, but there is a higher being, and there is
you believe a
power.
little bit of everything, so it's not hard for you to adjust it. Yeah, I get it. All right. No, that makes sense to me. Because if somebody is an atheist, they can't go and say a Catholic prayer.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. So, All right, yeah. Roland has another question, and this one I kind of like. I mean, I like all his questions, but I've never quite seen one worded. I've seen this question before, not by him, but I've never seen it worded quite like this. So I'm kind of excited to get your take on this. Can a spirit be willed into existence? This place is haunted because of so-and-so said so. He goes on to say the Phillips experiment. Like, do you think, kind of like, I guess it would go along the same lines as a tulpa, I think is what he means. I'm not sure. He could mean something totally different.
That's what I was going to say, like a tulpa.
Yeah.
Well, now I don't necessarily... You say spirit. Now, I don't necessarily believe spirit per se as how we would perceive them, it being a human being that's trapped here. I don't think that we can will those into existence. However, I do believe that we manifest, and I don't want to call it evil, but it is a negative type of entity that we create in certain situations, especially if a story has been told enough over time. If we give something enough belief, power or prayer, it can definitely make itself known. And again, though, it might just be a psychological factor in it all. If you go into a location or a place enough times and hear the same story over and over again about the same threatening, old man that, the same storyline over and over again, it's always possible that your preconceived notions can sit there and sway what you're perceiving at that point in time when you go into these locations. That's why I enjoy watching other people's work in the same location that I've gone to, but after I've gone to that location to see what coincides with what we've gotten. I don't like going in thinking that something's going to happen just because I saw it, or I'm going to interact with a certain energy just because they did. You know, everything gets swayed after that. If you go in expecting something, everything gets swayed. But I do believe that we can definitely manifest our own harmful beings, if that makes any sense. Not necessarily spirits, but they're definitely negative.
That's why I liked the way he worded it, because I'd never heard it quite like that. For anybody listening, a tulpa is kind of like, if you've heard of Slender Man, it was a fictional character. People believe that a tulpa, such as Slender Man, could be, or the idea of Slender Man, I should say, is enough people believing in something, and it gives it enough power to will it into existence.
Like they say, the Mothman sometimes can be referred to as a tulpa.
Yes.
Any type of, like Slender Man, if we sat there and talked about it enough, and I believe everything is energy, our words, our thoughts, even our thoughts.
Yeah.
The universe acts upon that energy. We are putting energy out there, and it's the same thing with words. If you say something enough, the universe is bound to act upon it because it's energy. It's bouncing back and forth. It has to be used in some manner or fashion, and it's always acted upon. So even if we sit there and say enough times, there's something evil in here, you're going to create something evil in there.
That's why I believe intent is the most important thing during an investigation, a haunting, because what you put out, you're going to get back.
Oh, absolutely.
So we have the
threefold rule.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Say what that is. Go ahead. Sorry.
The threefold rule, it's pretty much don't do anything shitty and nothing shitty will happen to you. Plain and basic terms. Make sure that you're just not a bad human being. That you're kind to nature, you're kind to humans, you're kind to animals, you're kind to everything, because what you put out into this world definitely does get acted upon, and it will always, always, always find its way back to you.
Isn't that the 3-part, whatever you put out there will come back to you threefold?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I just like being ghetto about it.
Yeah. No. Hey. You know, somebody's going to be cool other than me. That's only funny because I am the least cool person I know.
Whatever. I like it.
There's a difference between liking me and thinking I'm cool, though. All right, so we have a 2-part question from 2 different people. I'm going to read them both at the same time. Wolf wants to know, have you ever done an investigation that left you torn due to knowing that the activity is going to get worse? And then Roland adds, to follow up with Wolf's, do you, as a medium, do you as a medium feel, I think he means feel, or do you think you're obligated to tell the police about a crime if a spirit who might speak with was raped or murdered, etc., violated, told you who the perpetrator was? So it's kind of a 3-part thing there.
The only time that I've ever left an investigation was at Goatman's Bridge, because towards the end of that one, and that was one of the scariest things I have ever experienced in my life. And not even scary, it was just very unsettling to know that something could attach to me like that, because I'm usually very good at protecting myself about keeping, what channels me separate from what I feel. Like I legit feel like 2 different people at the same time, because I can focus on my energy and theirs separately.
And theirs, yeah.
This was definitely one time where it overtook me, and I'm not proud to say that, but I am proud about the fact that I left, because I knew what it was doing. That was the investigation that I had my brother on with me, and had the other investigator with me. And keep in mind, me and my brother are best friends. I mean, I would never do anything to hurt him. He's legit my best friend. He's super chill. So am I. We never fight. That night, towards the end of it, after I got scratched, my demeanor just kind of shifted after a while. Like about 10 minutes into it, I was kind of out of it for about 10 minutes. And then after that, I just turned into like a completely different person. I was standing there and I wasn't listening to them apparently, but you can see it on the video. I'm just walking around trying to find this spot, and I'm like, leave me alone, because I'm trying to find what I'm looking for back in this like brush area underneath the other bridge, which I shouldn't be going to. I mean, it was pretty dangerous to get down there, and it was like again, something just like took me over. So then I finally go back up to where they are, and I just can't help but want to punch them both in the face. Like, and I mean, not just punch, I mean like start beating the living crap out of both of them. I just felt rage and anger, and it was because I was trying to help spirits pass over. And that particular entity that's at that bridge that was brought there by people doing satanic rituals and things like that, liked to keep them trapped there. He hated that I was trying to help them move on. And so it was like he was lashing out at me. And so I told them, I was like, okay, we're done. I was like, because I feel like I'm going to hurt you guys, and I would never want it to come to that. So we packed up everything and left. Now, as soon as I walked off of that bridge, going back over towards the parking lot where the car was, I instantly started throwing up. It started right then and there and didn't stop for 2 weeks until I went to the hospital, to the ER, and got pumped full of liquids because I was so dehydrated. It was one of the worst experiences in my life, but I would definitely go back to finish what I started. But I'd go without everybody.
I have to say, first of all, there's no shame in that. You shouldn't have guilt over it, and I actually want to say thank you for admitting it and saying it on air, because some people don't understand the dangers of what we do, and you know, it's all fun and games, and it can be fun, but there is a real danger to it, and there's no shame in saying this happened, this can be dangerous, and you know, and tell people what to watch out for and the signs, and you know. So
absolutely.
I thank you for telling that story so freely.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, we don't sugarcoat it. I mean,
nope.
There's no point in doing what we do if we're not going to be honest about it.
That's how I feel.
I wouldn't spend as much money on these things as I do just to lie about something. I mean, right. I could get a way better hobby for less money.
Yes, it's one of the most expensive hobbies,
exactly.
Jobs, however you want to look at it. It's very expensive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
We're running
especially
out of time.
When you're a one-person team.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We're going to run out of time here shortly, but so I'm going to get to a few more questions here. Okay. Question wants to know. Roland has a question. Here we go. He wants to know, has a spirit ever followed you home? And if so, is that creepy if you go to the bathroom?
Now, that's one thing that I've always dealt with. They've always kind of been there. So, I mean, it's not just places that I've investigated. Sometimes it's just random ass spirits like popping in. I don't know what it is. Like maybe they're like, hey, she can help me, and they just do it. But even my fiance at points is like, you need to tell them to go away because he says he feels somebody standing in the room watching us. And I mean, I know who he's talking about because I can see them, but he doesn't believe in anything, and he can feel, you know, them in there.
Like,
so, I mean,
Grandma, not right now. We're trying to make a baby.
Right. That's funny that you say that because two of the white light spirits that I have that are pretty much always around me are two of my great uncles, my mama's brothers.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so it's really funny when, like, he acknowledges them being there. Because ever since I got pregnant, it's really weird. They come around a lot more often, like they're trying to, like, check up on him, kind of. Yeah, so it gets kind of weird. But, the thing about the bathroom, when I was little, that used to freak me the fuck out because I would go to the bathroom by myself, and this was after I watched it, and like I still won't go near like drain sewers and stuff like that. I seriously cannot tell you how much I hate those because of it. And I was so afraid to go to the bathroom too, because, you know, the part where you're like, he pops up through the drains and stuff. I would not go to the bathroom by myself for the longest time. And then when I finally did for the first time afterwards, I actually did get followed in there by this teenage female spirit who used to kind of follow me. I don't know who she was. She would never tell me her name. She was just kind of always there. I think it was just like a residual energy maybe from the house that we used to live in. But she always used to follow me. So she ended up in the bathroom with me one day. And I think maybe she was doing it that way I wouldn't be scared. Like, you know, I'll go with you, because it was the first time that I didn't have somebody standing outside of the bathroom when I went.
Maybe.
But I mean, it was weird. She was in the bathroom with me, and I was like, okay, I don't know what to do, but I need to pee, so I'm gonna go.
What else can you do? Like,
yeah, right.
See, I'm not a medium. I'm not a psychic. So if I ever looked up and there was a spirit there while I was peeing, yeah, I'd probably do a little bit more than pee.
I was just like, I gotta go. Like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, I would not be happy. The shower, you know, I'm always worried about stuff like that. You know, I'm also the type that checks behind the shower curtain for, like, Freddy Krueger and stuff before I get in the shower.
I use the bathroom. I always open the shower curtain. I still will not use the bathroom.
Especially in other people's houses. I have to look.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if your deranged cousin broke out of the mental ward and is, like, trying to stalk and kill you. No, thank you.
Yep. I ain't doing it. Nope, I'm checking. One more question. Here we go.
All right.
It's from Roland, of course. Do you have a rule to who you'd cross over, or do you think spirits have the right to stay if they feel they should stay?
I don't have any rules. I mean, if you want help, then yes, I will give it to you. I've rarely ever come across something that's super either evil or negative that wants to crossover. Most of the time, that's not what they're there for. But there have been 2 incidents that I can think of off the top of my head where I tried to help. In one instance in particular, this older lady pass over, but she didn't want to. She said she was waiting for her son to get there. And I mean, she just wanted to wait for him. And you have to respect their wishes. You also can't forcibly cross over energies and spirits, no matter what people may think.
Even if you can, I don't think it's right.
No, not at all. Yeah, they sometimes they choose to stay because they're waiting for someone. In the instances that I found, they're waiting for someone, so they don't want to cross over yet. And it's really weird to me. And I try and explain to them, you know, you can come back and wait for them, cross over though, and get peace in this moment. And they're just like, no, I'm fine here. I'm okay. They're completely content with being stuck. And it's a very odd feeling, but I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling at the same time that anybody would choose to stay in that state, because after a while, you know, their energies get way more eroded, I want to say, is the best word I can think of it. It diminishes over time.
They must have a reason then that's at one point was pretty important to them.
Yeah. But it's also, how do you know if, you know, that person has passed over? She was pretty old, and the garb that she was dressed in looked like she was at least from like the early 1920s, 1930s. I mean, there's no way, you know, that if her child was still living, you might not even know that he passed. So I did try and look up and research, you know, I only had a first name from her, but I did try and look up, you know, if she had any kids or what happened to them. I was never able to find any of that information to see if maybe, you know, they already did pass over, and she needed to as well.
That's sad. All right, yeah. So I bring it back from my very first season, this little game I do. 5 quick questions, answer as quick as you can.
Guys.
Whichever one you lean towards more, it doesn't have to be all the time. I always say there's no right or wrong answers, but I do judge you. It's just something that, you know, sometimes I do it in the beginning, but I saved it towards the end to you so we can laugh a little bit. All right. Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Investigator or hunter?
Investigator.
Data or evidence?
Evidence.
Provoking or no way?
No way. No way. I don't know why I said
Residential or commercial?
commercial.
Orb or dust?
Dust.
There you go. See, A++. See? No judging needed.
Whoop.
Woohoo.
I'll pay it.
See? All right. Ashley, why don't you throw out all your social media? Tell people where they can find you, where they can listen to you, all that great stuff, because we got only a few more minutes, and I want to make sure there's no more last questions, so I'll do that while you are telling people where to find you.
You guys can go ahead and go on YouTube, find me underneath Profoundly Paranormal, not Pro Family, because apparently a lot of people get that confused, and that's just super weird. So Profoundly Paranormal. No, it's okay. I laugh all the time too. I'm like, no, not Pro Family. Like I'm not that crazy. No, Profoundly Paranormal. On YouTube, you can find it on Facebook. You can also catch me on the American Ghost Hunter show, which streams on Paranormal Warehouse. We also stream just from the American Ghost Hunter page. That's also on YouTube as well. And then you can find my podcast on RU Media Network, and it's called Storming the Unknown Podcast. You guys can find that on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, iTunes, and Spotify.
Yes, and I will be on there late November.
Yeah, buddy, I can't wait for that show.
Yes, that will be fun. So I'm going to do a couple quick shout-outs here, just to make sure I got everybody. Of course, the co-owner Matt's in there. Of course, Roland and Ashley was in there, and Cynthia. Fred, of course, thank you again. We had Wolf, and if I miss anybody, I'm sorry. Luna was in there for a while. Josh was in there for a while. That's from memory, because I won't be able to scroll all the way back. I think I said everybody else in the beginning, so if I missed anybody, I am very sorry. Have any last words, Ash?
No, ma'am, I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
And you'll come back, right?
Always. Anytime you need me.
Yes, I get, because we have so much to talk about, so.
Oh, yeah. Never ending.
Yes, definitely. So, all right, guys, next week there is no show. Yes, I'm actually taking a goddamn Friday off. And it's well deserved. And then I think it's the 11th. I will be back, and we have the awesome Josh Hurd coming on. It's been a while, so can't wait for that show. It's gonna be.
That's gonna be a good one.
Always is. Always is. So until then, guys, have a great. I was gonna say week, but I guess have a great rest of the month, because I won't see you until next month. So. Good night, guys.